Good evening, everyone. This is Dan Spring, Chair of the Board of Finance, calling the meeting of the Board of Finance for the town of North Stonington to order this day, July 21st, 2021 at 7 p.m. Present, of course, myself, Dan Smith, Paul Simon, Ann Aiken, Carolyn Howell. Brett Mastriani is here as well. And we can begin by public comments. Should have any.
How do I raise my hand?
Carl, I'll know that you need to make a comment. We're just going to have in-person comments go first. So Sean, go ahead.
Okay.
Just had one quick comment. Tonight you're considering an additional appropriation for completing Kingswood paving, actually Kingswood Drive and Old Colony Drive this fiscal year instead of next. I, for one, don't see the urgency in doing this. The funds weren't included in it wasn't urgent enough to include them in the budget. The roads are pretty much in the same condition. They were put down back in 2017. I think we could have a better use of our undesignated fund balance and utilize town funds the following year and LOSIP to complete the project as originally scheduled. Thank you.
Great, thank you.
Brian, go ahead and unmute yourself.
Yeah, can you hear me?
Yep, go ahead.
Okay. Yeah, I'm going to ask the board not to appropriate the request for the roads in Kingswood. That should have been done a long time ago or during budget time. And the thing is, the Board of Finance struggled when they were looking at the 2.8 or the 2.6, and they decided that the 2.8. The amount of appropriation they want for Kingswood and Meadowwood, I believe, comes up to somewhere around $410,000. It really bothers me as a taxpayer in the town, since I know they just want to get the project done, but they should have done it long time before. And the other thing is, I don't know if it's a conflict of interest, if anybody on the board lives in Kingswood and Meadowwood, because it's just not right. I think if they want that, it should go to a public town meeting and everybody should have a vote on it. But because of the last year's budget and such a controversy, it was over just to lower the taxes for everybody in town. I say no, and I hope the Board of Finance will back me up on that. Thank you.
Thank you, Brian. Brian, just so you know, any appropriations that would be approved by the Board of Finance at 20,000 or better would go to a town meeting and be debated and voted on. So do we have more public?
Yes, Carl, go ahead.
Yes. How you guys doing? Good evening. Relationship to the Relief Act funds, the two items that you're going to be talking about, the firemen and the emergency board things, those should go through. As far as the other two for the 1%, I believe you're getting two payments, one of half and then a year or so down the road, another half. Instead of giving them 1% of the full amount right now, I think 1% of what you have to work with of each one of them three items. And then if the money does show up next year, then give them the other 1% of that. That would be about all I have to say. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Carl. And your last name, just for the record, so that we've got it right.
Johnston?
Yep.
Thank you.
That's it.
That's all. Okay. Um, I'm sure some of these things that have been brought out by the public, we're going to be talking about, so we'll see where the issues go. Any correspondence to be reported? I have none. I know that you had presented something. I never got the letter, Carolyn, so I don't know what that correspondence is about.
Lewis, who is a taxpayer in town, he's also a business owner. He approached me last weekend and asked if I had received a letter that he had sent to all of the selectmen, the chair of the Board of Finance and other board chairs. And he had asked that it be shared with all of the members of all of the boards. I told him I had not received it. He forwarded it to me and I sent it on to my chair and my board. So you should have received one of those copies.
I wasn't notified anything came into the town hall. And the correspondence you sent to me did not have the attachment. I didn't have it.
Well,
Is
we'll
it,
have to
is
check.
it relevant? Is it something that we should present?
I think it is relevant.
And so why
I
don't you give us
can-
some details, please?
Okay, I can read it. Let me find it. Uh,
Dan, I just want to let you know that I'm on the call. I didn't know if you saw that I was on the call.
Is that Ron? Oh, Mike.
Mike.
Anderson. Okay.
Since Brian Rathman was talking, I've been on the call.
Thank you, Mike.
All right, so I guess he wanted the letter read into the minutes of the meetings that were being held for the commissions. It was sent to the Board of Selectmen, Planning, Zoning Commission, Economic Development, Education Center Subcommittee, Conservation Commission, Board of Finance. And as I acknowledged, I'm just sharing the information. I don't necessarily agree with everything in the letter, but I think it's important for the people of the town to be heard and that the information be considered. It says, board members, the sale of town property located at 298 Norwich Westerly Road would be a complete loss to the town of North Stonington taxpayers forever and into the future. Once the property is sold or leased to own, it will be gone forever. Where would you find a 7.67 acre parcel of property in North Stonington Village? Our town always wants to preserve and protect certain parcels of land in our town. Why would this parcel be any different? The town has even gone to the extent of setting up an open space fund for parcels of interest throughout our town to acquire. So why lose control of the property at 298 Norwich Westerly Road? The town file card shows the parcel's most current appraised value at $4,742,200 and doesn't include the buildings. This parcel would be a nice greenway for a future park or a future regional school. We don't know what the future will bring, but once we sell it or lose control of this parcel, it's gone for good. The best investment to the town would be to mothball the building, winterize it, shut everything down until funds are sought to take the dilapidated buildings down. Then the town's operating costs, which include utilities, would be minimal. The town should not be in the landlord business at all. Selling this parcel is not an option, or rezoning it. Also, if this parcel was sold to a nonprofit, the town would not see any tax revenue. The board shouldn't look at this as a quick way to infuse money into the general fund. This property is an asset and a gem for the town's future. I have a couple of questions for the Board of Selectmen and Board of Finance members. One, if the property was so unsafe for our children to attend school in the building, why is it okay for another school to open there? Two, the taxpayers were sold on the concept and approved by the taxpayers that the building would be torn down. Now it still stands. Three, why was the school project closed out? losing hundreds of thousands of state reimbursed funding for demo. 4, were the taxpayers notified if the school project was closed out, then the town would lose matching funds from the state to demo the old school. 5, the only thing that was told to the taxpayers was that most of the funds were being used on the new building. 6, why didn't the town officials go to a referendum and ask for additional money to match state funds to demo the old school? 7, are the residents in our town aware that the chairman of the School Modernization Building Committee and Board of Ed member, the individual that in fact wants to purchase the property for her own use as a school? These boards have told our community that we needed a new school building and our existing school buildings aren't safe for our children. Something here doesn't sound ethically correct. This individual has had special tours of these buildings and has been on the inside of any negotiations. 8, what is the current asking price for this property? Thanks, Ron Lewis. So I agree that the town should not sell the property. I would love if the 2-story wing was leased as originally, we thought would happen. And I think if that can't happen, then I agree that, we should try to make a park or something that the town could enjoy here.
I can see some of Ron Lewis's points in the letter. However, I would have to reference back to the referendum that did take place, where the town moved to investigate either a sale or a lease of the property. Mike.
Want to take up precious time in your meeting, but I responded to all of the questions that Mr. Lewis had presented. He then responded again, and then I responded once again to his responses. So I'm happy to forward that to the entire Board of Finance so that you can see all of the dialogue that took place rather than me reading that and taking up time in your meeting right now.
I think that's acceptable to everyone. Yeah. The other that I would state is, again, we're an oversight board, and, the management or administration of town entities really is up to the administration of Board of Selectmen. So it's not that we don't oversee and give voice, but management is done by the Board of Selectmen. And again, I would have to reference the referendum that did take place. So and beyond that, I don't think any board member here has more information than that I know of. So, okay. All right, so why don't we move on to agenda item number 4 for Board of Selectmen to talk about the relief package funds.
Thank you, Dan. Thank you, board, for having me here to talk about this and having a meeting and accepting the correspondence with regards to this, having just passed it on to you recently. I know you'd prefer to get this a little bit earlier, but of course, we're trying to do our best to utilize these funds as expeditiously as possible, as responsibly as possible. And, we've had some extra meetings to try to make sure we're making the best effort to use these funds in the most appropriate way, with as much public feedback as possible. And we've had a number of meetings, public meetings, to talk about the utilization of the ARP funds. Some of you have been at some of those meetings, all boards and commissions. We've talked about the state of the town. We've had a couple of Board of Selectmen's meetings. So I think the approach right now is that there's some things we pretty much knew we wanted to do right away. There's some things that are kind of going to come pretty shortly hereafter. And there's probably some more long-term planning that's going to happen as well as we roll things out. So what you have before you is kind of our immediate needs. As Dan, as you alluded to at the beginning, as it relates to the Relief Act monies, we had made the decision that even though our auditor says we don't need to go through the normal process of Board of Selectmen, Board of Finance, town meeting, we were going to do that anyway. So we are here before you looking for your recommendation for our recommendations, and then we will follow that up with a town meeting. And we'll look to do that with any appropriation request for these funds over $20,000. I'll just quickly summarize, which you should have received the request via email. I know you did. On the board, at the meeting at the Board of Selectmen on July 19th, the following uses for the American Rescue Plan funds were approved by the Board of Selectmen. We're now asking the Board of Finance to review these uses and to approve or reject these allocations. A donation to the North Stonington Volunteer Fire Company, $165,000 to be equally distributed over 3 years. Contribution to North Stonington Volunteer Fire Company. Should there be a reemergence of COVID-19, we must be positioned to respond to fire emergencies as needed. We currently do not have enough daytime coverage, and another outbreak could cripple our ability to respond. Second, so that's the first. Second, implementation of municipal notification system. This is a not to exceed $15,000 at this point. COVID-19 exposed a deficiency in communication ability for a non-emergency day-to-day information. This can be corrected with a system available for reverse messaging. Current system available can only be used for imminent emergencies. We are currently vetting out 3 vendors to take a look at how we can implement this, but we want to be able to have a better way of another way of communicating with the public. We obviously have multiple ways that we are communicating with the public, but a reverse messaging system, text, phone, email, phone calls, would definitely be helpful and was recommended. Funding for Ledge-Lake Health District, 1% of the funds, $15,000. In order to be sure our local health district is prepared, should there be an increase in need, we are recommending 1% of our allocation be provided to them. Ledge-Lake Health District has been paramount in providing testing, vaccinations, and community outreach during the pandemic. Funding for social services via the Pawcatuck Neighborhood Center, 1% of the funds, $15,000. To provide Pawcatuck Neighborhood Center funding to administer needs to North Stonington residents still feeling the impact from COVID-19. And finally, funding for the Southeastern Connecticut Council of Governments Planner 3 Recovery Coordinator, $10,092.92. This position would be assisting the COG municipalities, the Southeastern Connecticut Council of Governments municipalities, overseeing their everyone's participation in the recovery efforts. A request from each member town is for 1% of their county allocation. So that's our portion. That was unanimously approved by all the CEOs this morning at the COG meeting. So all the mayors and first selectmen supported the ask for this. And so we are all going back to our towns asking for this allocation so that the COG can hire this person to help us with the administration. So it's a, yep, 10. This would be $10,092.92. And this would be given as we get an invoice from the Council of Governments for that amount for 4 years to help support that position. Yes. No, once. Sorry. It's split. It's for, I apologize. It's $10,092.92 in total, which supports the position for 4 years. Fumbled my words. So basically what we would do, I can answer any questions about any of these first, if you'd like to, and then I can go into the other appropriations request.
Here we go. Anyone have questions relative to the 5 items brought up so far?
I have a couple, Dan.
Okay, Paul.
Great. Mike, the 1% for Ledge-Lake Health District. Many member towns use Ledge-Lake, is that right?
Yes, they support a number of towns.
Are all towns being asked for the same 1%?
They actually, this is not an ask that they have put forward yet. We are assuming an ask is going to be coming from them. So we're actually being proactive on this. Considering the amount of work they've done for our town and the staffing that they have, I think we want to make sure that they are prepared if we need them. We want them to be here. I can tell you Ledge-Lake helped every time I asked, they were there. We had a lot of education sessions, many online educational forums, vaccine clinics, vaccine testing, testing in the community. So this is something that we're preemptively distributing to them. It wasn't an ask.
Okay, no, I've seen their presence in town quite a bit. Just curious what other member towns are doing, but so this is not similar to the Council of Governments, a number of member towns that there was an ask for a 1%er.
No, we got a not to no, we did get an email. So there's a lot of discussion about how these funds should be spent, and a communication was sent to all the towns and cities about trying to put 30% into a number of different areas that support mental health, that support things of that nature. And I don't know if Ledge Light kind of falls into that bucket, but there was no ask on this, but we're trying to move forward on that.
And the Pawcatuck Center, was that a real ask, or are we being preemptive with that one as well?
Again, that's a preemptive distribution. They aren't asking for it, but they are providing an incredible amount of support now to our community. I don't know if anyone had seen yesterday the coordination of Unite CT and a food bank distribution right here in North Stonington. I think we gave out, I think it was somewhere between 40 and 60 meals yesterday here in North Stonington. We had Unite CT here to help landlords and tenants who are struggling with rental situation. And Pawcatuck Neighborhood Center coordinated that. Of course, they're now here in North Stonington on Tuesdays from 9 to 4. And I should note that we have over the last couple of years not fulfilled their ask as part of our budgetary process. We have not cut them from what we had given them, I don't think, but we have not fulfilled their full ask that they've been looking for. So this, when I've talked to Susan, their executive director, I made it clear that we would look for these funds to be used directly for North Stonington families in a way that's going to be helpful to those impacted the most severely from COVID-19. And she was very happy to be able to help us in this. And I don't know if this will be the only request we put forth for PNC. I think it'll depend on how this all shakes out, but they are in essence our social services agency for the town.
No, they're a rock solid group for sure. Thank you. Just one last thing, the role that a number of different municipalities for this Council of Governments, that's not 1%, right? It's a little bit less than 1%. It's like 10.9 or something you said.
Right. Well, that's because it's 1% of our county allocation, I think. That's
Okay.
why. So our county allocation is like $1 million.
Yeah, but that one was requested. That wasn't a preemptive.
That was a request. That's a request. Yep. That's an actual request.
Thank you, Mike. That's all I got. Thank you, Dan.
Thank you. Well, yeah, Brett.
A few questions on this. The notification system, which I think is a great idea, the 15,000 not to exceed, will that cover us a year? Will that cover us 3 years? I know there's like a yearly.
We're still
cost.
getting pricing, and we're still interviewing vendors for that. So I don't have an answer on that for you, but more to come. I think we're safely asking for the 15 because we think that will cover us to at least get this implemented. With any luck, it may be less than that.
Okay, great, thanks. And the funding for Ledge Light, I think Ledge Light's done a great job, and they are very responsive. But didn't you guys just approve an ask for them within the past few months that they requested from our COVID relief money from last year?
We did. We approved an ask earlier. I think it was in maybe January or something like that, for $3,000 or so. But Christine, you want to weigh in on that?
I actually pulled that up because I thought somebody might bring it up. So they actually requested 10% of our municipal CRF second allocation that we got. So it was $3,700. Health districts and emergency response people are not being given funding directly. If they work within a municipality, they have to ask the municipalities for the aid. So there's no direct federal aid going to Ledge Light. So anything they would get, they have to get from their member towns. So that's why we've put this money aside, because we anticipate there will be an ask.
Okay. And then how much longer is our contract with Ledge Light? Does it extend that 3 years?
Well, we actually just looked into that.
It doesn't technically have an end.
Right.
It has it has legal terms as to how you can go about terminating. But it's a process you have to initiate I want to say in January to end it for the.
So it's like
following
a
June.
self-renewal kind of
Yes.
contract. Okay. I just, when we look at the full dollar amount and we wonder, are we going to, I mean, we don't know the future. Are we going to be with them for the next 3 years or 4 years? I did like the caller's comment about giving what we've gotten per year. So if we had gotten half the allocation this year and half next year, maybe we split that up, because who knows what might happen by the next year. So we know what we received this year. We received that half of that allocation. But next year, we think we're getting it, but you never know. Something could happen.
You're talking about the tranches of money?
I'm talking about the tranches. So this is based on the full the full total
Yeah,
dollars.
we're gonna get it over a 2-year period.
Right. So we only have half of it as of right now. So 750.
We do only have half of it, but it's a federally legislated number that's got time periods in it. They can't not give it. to
Yeah, I mean, that's
us.
fine. That can be certainly discussed.
Yeah,
I-
it's just a point. I when the caller brought that up, I thought it's this safe bet to look at it that way.
I
compared to
think the
count on
way we're trying to look at this is that these are, right now we're hearing an awful lot about the Delta variant, and now there's a new one, and there's now a re-emergence potentially. We have we have this is the battle of those vaccinated versus unvaccinated. Now it's crazy. And we could have a problem. So I think we want to be in front of this. And if there's a way for us to be proactive, I think that, to me, this makes sense. And the Board of Selectmen thought so as well. But I would just say with Ledge Light, I've been on a lot of calls. Ledge Light and Uncas have pretty much tag teamed on pretty much all the calls that I'm on. And there was a lot of them. There's been hundreds of calls over the last year and a half, if not 1,000 probably, with all these agencies, and they're doing a great job collaboratively. But Ledge Light is really looked at as Steve Mansfield, their director, as really kind of the prominent voice as a director of health. And I think we have a really good health group. I'm sure there's great benefits to Uncas as well, but I couldn't see the health districts they have a job to do, so I don't think one versus the other.
Mike, and I
makes
agree with you.
sense.
Steve's been excellent every time I've had to deal with him, and he's super responsive. I'm just saying, I like the idea of maybe splitting that up. And then the last one is for the Planner 3 Recovery Coordinator. Do you have a description of what they'll be doing for us, and a job description of what they are, because that's a new position for them that they're
I
creating?
have a job description. I don't have it for you, but I do have it. It was provided to the CEOs, and we all have received a copy of it.
All right, thanks. That's my only questions right now.
I'm happy to share it. I just didn't have it with for you guys.
All right, great. Thank you.
Mike, relative to the amount going to the volunteer fire company, has it been designated specifically to be utilized for a per diem?
So I think
or to their discretion?
we would
or-
specify that. We have treaded a little bit carefully with
Mm.
how we have worded this, that you I'm sure noticed. And that's not accidentally. We feel that it's probably acceptable to be given for a per diem, but the guidance is so vague that this is, in our opinion, clearly approvable and acceptable for the Treasury guidance that's there. So I think we would just certainly forward it along with that's the intent of the funds. And, but as far as our approval, I think that's the way we would be best suited to approve it for the town's purposes.
Yeah, I was going to say, it just doesn't have a lot of clarity as it versus what we have talked about and what they have requested. And
Yeah, it's because, I've said this, I know I've told the Board of Finance this, and I've said it at multiple meetings. The Treasury guidance is there, you can read through it, but it's not like there's some hotline to call to say, is this approved? They're not going to give you, yes, this is approved, no, this isn't approved. So we're doing our best to say, okay, this seems to fit correctly. And so as long as and what CCM has told us is, as long as you can kind of justify, it seems as long as you can kind of justify what you're doing, we've had public discussion about it, we're going through all the right motions, there shouldn't be any situation where they're coming back and asking for the money back. I mean, as long as we have the documentation there. So certainly no guarantees, but we think this gives us our best chance.
right, relative to the items that you've presented so far, I don't sense objection. Relative to the process you're looking for, though, do you want a motion?
Yes, so I would ask for the Board of Finance to probably motion to recommend the approval of these expenses with the donation to the volunteer fire company to be recommended to town meeting.
Goes through. In relative to my last line of questioning, are you concerned at all that this 220,000 is 30% of what we're getting total for this year? Do you see any benefit in trying to break that up half this year, half next year? I just worry 30% seems like a lot right off the bat.
I wish we were here presenting the use of the entire amount, but we don't have all that information yet. The purpose of these funds is to inject it into the places that it's needed. And so I have absolutely no problem with moving forward with this. And you can guarantee I'll be at your next meeting with another tranche of requests to make sure we're getting this money in the hands of those who need it.
But if you're looking at a few different programs that you're looking to do, is it best to break those up so you can do them throughout those years? So if you run out of funds on all the things you want to do with this first 750,000, then you're pushing off other stuff till next year that you could have got started this year and continued with the funds from next year.
Yeah, the Board of Selectmen went through a list of things that we thought were plausible for the use of the funds. We had some head nods on a few of the things. We had some agreement on some of the things. We had some head nods on some of the things, and we need some more information on some of the things. I can tell you based on the numbers that we've reviewed, I don't see us running into any problem where we're going to not have enough funding for the things that I think we're going to be able to agree on. I'll just tell you, if I could read the tea leaves, and I really don't know, because what's going to happen with COVID, things could completely change. But if things remain the way they are, I can see us at the, I think a fair amount of the money is possibly usable for things like, our water sewer initiatives, and that's going to take some time anyway. So, that's next year. But we've talked about a lot of things, and I don't see any problems with this allocation whatsoever.
Carolyn, you had a question?
How many towns belong to the SCOG?
22.
And the communication system, is that for equipment or is that for service?
It is
that?
for a service. And again, we don't know how much that's going to cost. So that's why I have the not to exceed on that particular item.
But are you anticipating this only for 1 year, or are you anticipating it for,
I don't know what I'm looking for here is to cover the cost of a year. So I don't think it's going to cost that much. And the numbers we've gotten from the people we've talked to so far for the two that we've interviewed was like half of that number. But I don't have an answer for you on that. But I think we just want to be able to, like, by the time we get to town meeting, I should have a number. which is, so that we can answer that question for people at town meeting.
So what happens if you don't need all of that money? I'm only asking because we use a system like this, where I work and I know how much we pay for what we use it for, and it's the same idea. You email, text, call simultaneously.
We just wouldn't use it. We would just use only the amount that we need for
So the
this.
funds would remain. And then, and none of these funds that are being approved they're not interchangeable with anything else. They're just for what they're approved for.
Yeah, I mean, we would cut a check to these places that we've indicated here. And I think that's pretty well spelled out in the letter. So yes, that wouldn't go to
So if the
anywhere
town
else.
was to approve it at town meeting and it wasn't all needed for that purpose that it was approved for, the money would just remain in the account.
That's correct.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions? All right. My own point here on these federal dollars is once they've been granted to the town, and utilization should be aligned to their guidance, but also there should be some execution. In other words, that it's intended that these dollars be put to work, relative to what's already happened and what can be impactful to the towns that have received the assets. So I would make a motion that we approve the allocation of relief package funds as presented by Mike Gergel, the first selectman. 5 items, one being at 165,000, which would take a mandatory town meeting to be approved. Dan Smith is the second.
Was there a total amount, Dan, that you wanted to put in the motion?
165,000 was the amount that would have to go to a town meeting.
The total of expenditure,
I can put the total expenditure, yeah.
it's $220,092.92.
Thank you.
Thanks. Good call, Paul.
List for the record, each line item and how much it is.
Would you like me to do that, Dan?
Sure. I think, and if you're willing to take the motion that way, sure, go ahead.
Okay, I can list it. I have a paper right here. So $165,000 to the North Stonington Volunteer Fire Company to be equally distributed over 3 years. Not to exceed $15,000 for the implementation of a municipal notification system. Funding for Ledge Lake Health District of 1% of the funds for $15,000. Funding for social services for the Pawcatuck Neighborhood Center for $15,000. Funding for the Southeastern Connecticut Council of Governments for $10,092.92. That's it.
Yeah. Any further discussion? All right. Yes.
Now that I read it like that, so for instance, the $165,000 for the fire company, you're dividing that into 3 payments to them.
That's correct.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, but even at that, it would exceed and would have to go to a town meeting. So, all right. If there's not further discussion, let's bring it to a vote. All in favor of the motion as presented, indicate by saying aye.
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 Opposed? Abstentions? Okay. 6-0-0. Right.
Okay, thank you. So the next item that I had to present to you was the proposal of an additional appropriation for paving. So the reason I'm coming to you with this is we will be paving a number of roads with our steep grant funding. Kingswood is one of the roads that we're paving regardless of this appropriation, just because that was made a little foggy in the comments earlier. That's not one of the roads that I'm asking you for this additional appropriation for. Basically, after the steep funding is done, this project is done, which is going to happen in September. We will have 3 roads left in the Kingswood neighborhood. Cedar Ridge will be done. There will be 3 roads left in Kingswood, and that would be Old Colony, Rhonda, and Laurelwood. A couple of them are fairly long. They have to be milled and paved. And it occurred to me, based on the budgeting process that we've gone through over the last couple of years, that you may want to consider this for an appropriation to do it now while the paver is already going to be out there. It's milling and paving, just so you understand like the reason for the cost. One of the reasons we want to make sure these roads are done and done properly with a very good and qualified contractor, which we've had great work success with, is it's important that we get that road down, because we don't want water pooling in anybody's driveways. So we have to take that road down to a good grade. So we thought it would potentially make sense to at least discuss the idea of the additional appropriation to finish this project off this year. That would come from the undesignated fund. Certainly you don't have to approve this appropriation, but I felt like we should come and at least discuss it because of the fact that the pavers are going to be back out there in September. It would alleviate us from having to budget for this next year, which it seems every year is a challenging budget year. And I think the writing was on the wall and has been on the wall that we've cut so much over the last couple of budget cycles that there's definitely going to have to be increases next year. So this is just another thing. And we did promise people that this would be somewhere around a 4-year project to get these roads fixed properly. I will tell you, in many of the spots of the roads, there is grass growing through the roads. It's not a great service for a neighborhood. It was never done properly in the first place. The people that have lived in that neighborhood have dealt with these roads for a number of years now, and it is time that they are fixed properly. So I'm happy to report most of the roads are fixed, with the fair majority of them finishing in September, with only 3 to remain. So the request before you is for this possibility of funding that would go to a town meeting for consideration to pave the remaining 3 roads as part of the September paving project and finish off the Kingswood neighborhood.
Right, for the record, Mike, the amount being requested is,
410,000.
and so what's being done so far is under contract.
Correct.
And do you foresee that there would be possibly a savings by doing it now because we have the contract with these individuals, as opposed to going to contract next fiscal year or the year after?
I think there's a possibility we could see some savings because they'll already be out there, but I don't know that for sure. But since the equipment will already be out there, there is a possibility. But I would come forth with what we know the price to be based on doing those 3 roads, and if it were less, then that's great for us. I can't sell it in a way that I'm unsure of. So I just think it's been a long time, and it would be nice to get the project done. But again, we know the paver is going to be out there. It's good for me to come and talk about this now. I understand if it's something you don't want to approve or send to town meeting. But I think it makes sense to just complete this project this year. And then it's something you won't have to worry about in the budgetary process next year.
Discussion, any questions relative to this? Brett?
Yeah, I have to say I'm pretty concerned with this appropriation. I think part of the problem, or my concern, is this wasn't brought up during the budget discussion at all. We fought tooth and nail to try to lower that mill rate a little more, and we didn't want to dip into the undesignated fund anymore for that, to lower the tax rate for residents. And now we approve a budget, and now this comes forward, and this is a hefty amount. I understand the concerns with the roads in Kingswood and Meadowwood. I drive through there a lot, and I understand the concern because it's a neighborhood. But the chip seal isn't great on those roads, but it's no different than a lot of the other roads in town. There are roads actually in town that are in worse condition than that. I know it's something that needs to be done at some point. I'm concerned about the timing of this after our budget with no talk of it. And I am also concerned about the process that we've been using for this. I know that they're an approved company through the state, through the bidder list, but not putting something out to bid of this magnitude, and we haven't on the other roads, doesn't ensure that we're even getting the best price out of those approved bidders. There's definitely room that could be had for that. And I think when we just sign off on $410,000 without looking at the options, we're not doing the service to our residents that are paying these tax dollars. And but like I said, my biggest concern is we're doing it right after we approved the budget where this wasn't even a discussion.
I'd like to address those two comments. The first thing is the Board of Finance, I think it was last year, the year before, encouraged us to come forward with appropriation requests versus budgeting certain things. Hence the reason we're here right now, right? So we're trying to take, it's the responsibility of me and our board to try to make sure we're getting things done in town. And this is important. It's important to the residents that are there who've waited a long time, whose kids can't skateboard on these roads, who's having to weed whack their own streets. The second thing is the bidding process for this. We saw what happened. I wasn't in office then, but we saw what happened when we went out to bid and got the low bidder. And now we have roads that are less than adequate for those neighborhoods. We were within our legal right to use the state bid list for a qualified contractor. And that's what we've done. And I'm very, very happy with the work that's been done. We are getting a fair price. It is milling and paving. It is more expensive to mill. If we didn't have to mill those roads, the price would be a lot less. But because we want to take the grade down to an appropriate level, so we're not having pooling in people's driveways and stuff, we mill those roads as well. That's why it's a little bit pricier. So I just want to assure everyone that an appropriate process has taken place. In fact, this next project has not only gone through the town process, but it's gone through the state process for steep grant approval. So we've gone through a layered process to make sure that we're following the appropriate measures. And I'll just end by saying it's not always about saving a buck. I think we've done a good job, hence the budgets, hence the minimal increases that anyone has seen in budgets by saving funds, but also making sure we're spending our money wisely.
I think Brett brings up some good points. I think there's some sensitivity out there. And it is a large dollar amount. And that's why I was asking the questions about contract, this, that. And I know that it was rigorous in terms of how we selected who's doing the work now. I think that, we have to consider, could the town apply for another steep grant next year?
Yeah, so I think there's possible that we could use a steep grant next year. We could see LoSiP funding next year that could help offset this as well. So I think there's a possibility of a lot of things that could happen. I bring this forward not to beg for an approval. If you don't see that it's a decision that the Board of Finance wants to make, I'm fine with that. But I want you to understand that this needs to be done next year. If it's not done this year, it really needs to be done. There's 3 roads left. You don't want to have a couple of roads hanging out there that make this so the roads are so far away from having all been done at the same time in the neighborhood. So to me, it makes sense. But
Yeah, relative to the steep grant, so everybody understands. I mean, we pull that money out of the undesignated, but then as it's completed, we're reimbursed.
I'll just mention, Dan, though, we got steep funding this year for this project. There hadn't been steep funding available since I think 2016 or 17. So it hasn't been common to have steep funding available. It doesn't mean there couldn't be other grant funding available or other opportunities. I have no way of knowing that. So.
Dan, you had a question?
Yeah, closer. What is that? The $400,000 due to the undesignated fund balance, percentage wise?
It's going to bring us down to about 2.4 million, give or take.
Right. It'll take you down to 2.6 maybe. I think right now, as of today, you're at like 14%.
So we would use about 15% of our reserves. round numbers?
Probably a little less than that, but I think you're not far off.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't know.
Carolyn, are you all set, Paul?
No, I didn't see Carolyn's hand. I'll wait till she's done.
Go ahead, Paul, finish.
Yeah, please. Yeah, I just wanted to hop on the steep grant. So knowing that they have to be done next year, I mean, why wouldn't we wait to see if there are some grants available to us? Worst case, we have an appropriation request next year for the same effort. So I would be on board with waiting to see if we can get any steep grants.
All right. Carolyn,
With Paul that we should wait and see if we can get some grants to help offset this. After going through the budget process and understanding with the reval that a lot of people in smaller homes have already been hit with increases that have nothing to do, with their budget in general, I just can't justify pulling money out of the undesignated fund for this. It's not an emergency, and I don't think it's appropriate. I'm sorry.
thank you, Dan.
Next year, are they planning on doing more milling and paving in town with the same company?
I can't say whether or not we would be doing it with the same company or not. I don't know that, but
But will we be doing
every
milling?
year we do road improvements. So yeah, we'll definitely be doing improvements next
Some
year.
company will be in town doing milling and paving though.
We will be doing road improvements next year. We do some of it ourselves, so I can't speak to whether or not that is true or not. Road improvements will take place next year. I can safely say that.
Is this something that, do we as a town do milling?
We don't have the equipment to do that kind of milling.
Okay, thank you.
Brett,
Don't we sometimes typically use LoSiP money for these kinds of projects as well?
Yep,
So can we use that, our LoSiP money for next year?
we
to
can. We could
cover this.
We could. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, there's options. You have to understand, I'm not coming here like saying, first of all, this is an absolutely appropriate thing for me to ask for. And I look at it as my job, right? We have a paver that's going to be out there. It makes sense. We might get a break potentially by having them do it. I don't have any problem if we don't approve it. It's okay. I would be irresponsible in my mind by not bringing this forward.
I just want to add LoSiP funds are around $49,000, so it would only be a small portion of the ask here. Mike Anderson has a hand up.
Mike, I'm sorry, the screen's at an angle where I may not see you, so I apologize.
No apologies necessary.
There you go.
As far as the steep grants are concerned, is that something that can be, a reimbursable thing for if we expended monies this year for that the steep money could go back to replenish the undesignated fund, or does it have to go directly towards projects in that fiscal year?
So I don't think you'd be able to get reimbursement on a steep grant like that. No. Doesn't mean there's not other grants possibly available. I mean, honestly, some people are using the fact that they weren't able to do certain paving, they're using their ARP money. Some towns have more ARP money than we do, but there's, there could be other opportunities available as well. I don't know. And again, like between now and the time we pave in September, there could be something that comes up, and it doesn't mean that we haven't done it yet. We could apply then for a match or something like that as well. I mean, there's all sorts of opportunities out there. But right now, none are before us, and the pavers are coming in September. So.
Yeah, I think I'll say two things. I mean, one, I believe in kind of the sanctity of our unassigned, and that we have to look hard and fast as to how they're utilized. We have been using it to mitigate taxation in town. So we have lowered the level. I still think we're at a comfortable level relative to our policy. Also, on the other side, I think as people are paying more taxes on their properties because of the reval, I think they can appreciate that there's been upgrades to their own little neighborhood, particularly relative to the roads. So I can see both sides of this. I think if we potentially can pursue some kind of matching or reimbursement, that would be great. I think what Mike Virgo presents, though, is we have an opportunity and time that we have contractors in town, and this might be good utilization. So there's a number of sides to this, but yeah, it's a large amount of money. And again, anything that we do here, if it should be approved, would have to go to a town meeting. Any other discussion? All right, why don't we make a motion to approve the appropriation request in the amount of $410,000 for repaving of roads in the Kingswood neighborhood. I guess there would be 3 and would be adjunct to work that is already being completed there. And knowing that this also would have to go to a town meeting because of the dollar amount. Do I have a second to the motion? Mike Anderson?
I'll second it.
Okay, we have a second by Mike Anderson. Further discussion? All right, let's take it to a vote. All in favor indicate by saying aye or raising their hand, I guess, so I can see you guys over there. Nays,
Nay.
Nay.
abstentions, none. So that's been turned down, Mike.
I would just ask if after we have a sense of how the year shakes out, and if I still have time, would the Board of Finance be willing to hear this appropriation request again?
Yes.
Okay. So I may come back. I mean, we're going to be doing town meetings a little bit more often because of the rescue package funding. So it may have we may have one more opportunity to bring this forward. And
Yeah, and if
it's
it should
okay.
be a situation where we have to make a call for a special meeting, we'll do that. Just to refresh, we only have one more scheduled meeting. August, and the summer is over. So I think we have to give consideration to calendars, scheduling a town meeting. You know, if there's something that we have to prompt to move to a town meeting, we're going to have to call a special meeting. Go ahead, Dan.
Mike, when do the paving plants close typically?
Usually,
November.
yeah, usually around November.
Yeah.
November?
Yeah.
Okay.
Depends on the weather, I think, too. But
Okay, thank you.
thank you for listening.
Mike, thanks. All right, that moves us along to agenda item number 5, which is reports. All of them have been sent to you. The tax report is not in the form that you've seen in the past. We'll get there. Donna's doing a good job, but she's new to the job, and it's July, and she's been flooded with intake, which has been good. So we'll have something to you by August to make it a bit more clear. But, you know, you see the deposits. Christine, maybe you can make a comment relative to how things are going.
Things are going really well with the tax collection. There's a lot of people that are coming in to pay taxes still, people that are utilizing the drop box outside of town hall. And then as Mike mentioned, at the end of the fiscal year, we've implemented a new lockbox service through Lighthouse Payment Services. So if people are mailing their taxes in, they're going up to Lighthouse, then they're processing them, and then it's a direct transfer into our bank account for the funds. So collections are going well. And we just ask that if you don't need to come in and drop them off, to put them in the drop box or mail them in. Having the people standing in line just takes that much longer to get everything processed. So, and if you are planning to come in, the tax office is processing from 8 to 1.
Yeah, and I have seen people staying in line for 20 to 30 minutes to get their taxes paid.
Will they send a receipt to the people if they leave it in their box? I think that's probably why people want.
If you include a self-addressed stamped envelope, then we would return the receipt to you. It does say that on the tax bill as well.
I have a
All
quick
right.
question on this topic.
Yeah, Mike, go ahead.
I know that
Thanks for
the,
speaking up. Mhm.
there was, in Mike's newsletter that some of the tax bills went to the individuals versus the banks that had the escrows. And you said, I think there was Chelsea Groton was maybe the one bank that you mentioned. You know, I mean, I personally got a tax bill, which I never get because it goes to my bank, but I refinance. So was there other banks that were involved in that, Michael, that the taxpayer should know about?
No, it's just one bank and just happened to be Chelsea Groton, which was the local bank. And there was about 100 or so customers that were affected. So, and we fixed that by mailing, we actually mailed the bank the bills. So there's no action required from anyone. I did explain that in my most recent update, but it was just it was a coding error a coding error from QDS. It wasn't a, I mean, it's always our fault, but but it was a computer error.
Yeah, I don't know but why did I get a tax bill when my bank has an escrow for my taxes?
I have no idea. You said you refinance, so there might be some issue there.
Yeah, Mike, I would just call your bank and make sure they got a copy of it. I live in a different town and I always get my tax bill, even though mine is escrowed. So I don't know.
Okay. I didn't know if there was other banks involved.
I was told there was no other banks involved. We dug into it, but if you're finding something that's an anomaly, I would certainly want to know about it.
Okay. I'll keep you posted.
All right, thanks.
All right. Next agenda item number 6, previous minutes. Okay, they'll be tabled to our next meeting in August. Agenda item number 7, just future strategies. We talked about tax bills. I put it in there because of a little bit of glitch. Are there any reports from Board of Finance members relative to anything salient to the Board of Finance? No. Closeout, maybe you can just give comment to closeout, Christine, fiscal year 2021.
So the closeout is in progress right now. We are still receiving invoices for services that were rendered prior to June 30th and goods that were received prior to June 30th, as well as utility bills and different things for things during that time period. So we are still in the process of getting checks out and getting everything together so that we're ready for the audit that starts on September 27th.
Are you, maybe it's early yet, are you looking at a transfer possibilities?
We will definitely have at least one. We have to do prior year tax refunds because we budget that as at $1. So we will have that for your August meeting.
Okay. And last in here, I've got audit and their services should start in September.
Yeah, we are working with them now,
Oh, okay,
sending
good.
documents. There's a lot of things that have to go to them ahead of time. So both on the Board of Ed side and on the town side, we have a list of things that we have to prepare and upload to their share file. Susan does the majority of that for us on the town side. And then Deb Martin, the business manager for the school, she handles theirs.
All right. Yes, Brett.
Are they still doing, is that audit still happening remote?
Yes.
So this whole year, she's not coming in?
No.
Okay, thanks.
Everything will be entirely remote. It's a 2 to 3 week process that we'll have with them, as it was last year.
Carolyn.
So I had 2 questions. So last year it was remote and it cost us more money than had been proposed originally.
It cost additional money because there were additional documents that needed to be prepared related to COVID-19. So I don't know. It depends if we have to do a federal single audit, if there's additional things, and that is stipulated in our contract with them. But I don't know with COVID funds if there's going to be additional fees.
Do you know what the givebacks are yet? I
Nope.
know that. So you don't have any idea? State troopers, nobody?
Not at this time.
Okay. Do you think you'll know by our next meeting?
I hope so.
Okay, thank you.
Dan Smith, you're next.
Yeah, so are they planning on coming in after the audit is complete and giving a presentation this year? Or I know last year it was an anomaly and we didn't have anybody come in and explain, but I think maybe as a board, I think
That's
they're gonna have to do
beneficial.
that.
Mhm.
Yeah, Sandy has already asked when the November meeting dates are for the Board of Finance. She is planning to attend. I can't guarantee that she will be here in person. She may end up being remote if we're doing a hybrid meeting. Our auditor is of a higher risk population, so she limits her exposure.
Okay.
But you could do it, like Zoom. Yeah. Yeah. Right. And the only other thing I'll add as we get further on and with reports on Board of Ed, we'll be looking at the utilization of the RISA account. Just so that we have some oversight there, which has not been reported on as yet. Yes, Brett.
As we talk about this line item and future strategies, I'm wondering, as you look through the handbook for boards of finance, it talks about how we should be having reports or information on our investments, our pension funds, things like that. Is that, and I noticed, I mean, as long as I've been paying attention, we don't do that. Is that something that is done somewhere else and we don't see what's going on? It's one of the responsibilities when you look through that packet. So I didn't know where that gets done.
Yeah, I've always seen that as being covered in the audit. And that is, if you went to the audit, she reviews that. So, I take that as some oversight. I think things that we have talked about in the past that still are hanging a little bit is a little bit more of a disciplined investment statement, a mission statement. But teachers can use various vendors as well, so it makes it a bit more difficult. But there's not a defined investment mission statement.
So do we have someone that directs that process or?
Yeah, usually the vendors are offering an individual who is a liaison and helps those individuals to make proper suitable allocations and so forth.
Are you talking about on the Board of Ed side or the town side?
I'm talking about the town side. I'm just
Oh,
going,
I was talking Board of Ed.
yeah,
side.
just,
On the
well, that answered it for them too, but
on the
yeah, I
town,
just,
on the town side, so investment wise, I mean, we have a bank. I mean, that's all we have. We don't have like investments as per se, but on the pension side, the first selectman acts as a administrator, I guess you'd say. So we have to have a check-in once a year. We have a responsibility to have a check-in with the investment people to just make sure that the allocations are properly balanced. I mean, the company pretty much does everything and they have reporting requirements and things like that. So that's not something the Board of Finance has ever been involved in. I'm not sure if the Board of Finance would or.
Well, and everyone's individual pension account is self-directed. It's not that the town has money that the town is investing on behalf of
That's right.
the people.
Right,
They
but the-
choose which plans they're going to put
but the
themselves
town
into.
chooses which investment company they're using or.
Well, the town has, yeah, so prior to even me being here, a company had been chosen to take care of the pension program for the townspeople. And it is a good point, Christine. So people hear the word pension and they think long-term liabilities. Not so with North Stonington. We make a contribution every year. There's no long-term commitment to the town from the town of North Stonington. It's every year. So there's not some long-standing pension. But yeah, I mean, the selection process of a company, I guess that's a good question. I think the company's been in place for a number of years prior to our administration, but I do understand the company that they had before. There were some problems, and certainly predates my even knowledge of it. So this company has been very, very good. Good reporting, no complaints from employees or anything like that. So I wouldn't see any reason to
Yeah,
it.
and I'm not saying there should be a reason to switch. It's just when you look through the handbook and what Board of Finance is responsible for, that's one of the things that says we're supposed to review on, I don't know if it's an annual basis or what, but it's something that I know we haven't ever, that
I think it might be, and I don't know because I don't know what you're talking about, but we don't have a pension plan like other places have a pension plan, and I think that might be part of the distinction there. You know, we're not having some long-term liability for our town. It's literally one and done every year. Like there's no carryover. There's no like long-term liability for the town. So the money that goes in, it goes in on a yearly basis. It's contribute, the town budgets for it. We start over every year. There's no like, if the town went defunct, we'd owe something. No, it's just year by year.
okay, I appreciate it. Thanks.
Yeah, and unfortunately, we loosely use the term pension, which would indicate a defined benefits plan, but it's either a 401k or a 403b in the event of the Board of Ed. So, yeah. But there is a couple of paragraphs, in fact, almost a page in each audit relative to some oversight. Right. Anything else in future strategies that might be new?
The reconciliation policy, and I think we had a couple of policies hanging out there. I know we passed the undesignated fund one, and I think there was another one, but I think there's a couple of them sitting out there. So maybe in August we can visit that before we
Yeah, Sarah,
distracted with something else.
right. No, we'll get that done in August. In fact, I debated whether or not to put it on here, but Sarah took the lead on that one. It's the only one outstanding, which is the one on balancing the budget, balanced budget. And I know Mike Anderson was weighing in on that topic as well. So we'll get that done in August. It should be all set, Mike Anderson.
Yeah, we have, Sarah and I have not had further discussions on that, but if we want to try to, get going on that, and I think, August and September is a good time to get that done.
Okay, good. The other that will be coming up, and I didn't put it on simply because we're in closeout, but we talked about an RFP for auditing services. So somewhere past closeout, that's something that should be looked at. Yeah. All right. Thank you, Christine. We'll open it up again for public comments. Agenda item number 8. Do we have any at this time?
Brian, go ahead and unmute yourself.
Yeah. Yeah, on the rescue funds, I'm just wondering, because that's going to go to a town meeting, I understand. So I'm wondering if it's going to be separate items or is it going to be all of them together? Because if you don't like one, you'd have to vote no for all of them. I just didn't know how that was going to work. I guess that would be.
Brian, when we bring forward more than one item for the rescue funds to town meeting, I would bring them, I think the Board of Selectmen, of course, I'm only one member,
Yep.
would bring them forward separately. However, just so you're clear, tonight, the only approval that's going to go to town meeting is the volunteer fire company contribution. The rest of them did not exceed $20,000, so will not go to town meeting. So there'll only be one item that'll be considered at town meeting in this instance.
Doesn't seem like it should be. It seems like it should be all of them together because you're taking a big chunk out of that rescue fund.
I mean, technically, we don't even have to send it to town meeting. So I think we're taking extra steps for transparency and an open process with the town. So we're following the normal guidance we would have for any appropriation, which is any appropriation over 20,000 goes to town meeting.
I just think it's kind of brassy when different groups request a certain amount out of that. like I say, I don't agree with them all. I definitely agree with the fire department one, but some of the other ones I don't. You know, I mean, we did have we did have money in the budget for Ledge Light, and we did have money in the budget, I believe, for Pawcatuck Neighborhood Center. I mean, I'd love to throw something in there and get a percentage for me. Anyways, that's just my thoughts on that. I thought maybe they'd all go before the town, and then we could all decide whether it's yay or nay. All right, thank you.
Thank you, Brian. Any other public comment? All right, and I would move for adjournment. Do I have a second? Ann Aiken is a second on that. And I'm assuming that it's going to be all the go here.
Aye.
Aye. Paul, Mike, thank you. And
Thank you.
we'll call the time at 8:15.
See you, Mike. Oh, Lordy.